بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطاهرين ما دام ما في السماوات والأرضين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we thank and praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His many blessings that He has bestowed upon us. And we beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in those blessings. We beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge, not any knowledge but beneficial knowledge. That knowledge which will take us to and take us along the straight path. Alhamdulillah, by His grace, we are now in lesson number 2 of Al-Waraqat. A few pages, says Imam al-Haramain, which deals with this very important science referred to or dubbed in English as Islamic legal theory. What is Usul al-Fiqh? What is Usul al-Fiqh? The first part of today's lesson answers that very question. He says, ذلك لفظ مؤلف من جزئين مفردين أحدهما أصول والآخر الفقه. What does he say? ذلك لفظ, that is no less an utterance. مؤلف, made up of, constituted of, جزئين مفردين, of two parts. أحدهما, the first part would be the word usul, and the second part would be the word fiqh. This is very interesting from Imam al-Haramain. We want to get to the meaning of usul al-fiqh. But what Imam al-Haramain says, in order for us to get to the meaning, we first need to look at the apparent. We have to look at the construct. And when we look at the construct of usul al-fiqh, when we look to usul al-fiqh as an utterance, as something that you write down by way of example, what do we find? We find that it is made up of two parts. The first part being usul and the second part being fiqh. Here what we're going to do now, inshallah bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is talk a little bit about ta'lif. In the Arabic language, when you join two things together, you can refer to that as ta'lif, that would be number one, or you could refer to it as tarkib, joining two things together. Why are we discussing this? Simply because Imam al-Haramain, in terms of looking at the word usul al-fiqh, he tells us that is a ta'lif. So is ta'lif synonymous to tarkib? So in other words, whenever two words are joined, can we refer to them as ta'lif and at the same time also refer to them as tarkib? The scholars differ in this particular regard, and the next slide seeks to inform us, educate us as regards to this particular phenomenon. So the slide leads as I headed it up as linguistics. So ta'lif, lafzun mu'allafun, a word made up, a word joined, ta'lif. So certain scholars say it is synonymous to tarkib, so it means exactly the same thing. Whereas on the other hand, we find certain scholars saying no, ta'lif refers to one thing and tarkib refers to another thing. Basically it means to join, but when you say ta'lif, it means joining two words in a particular manner. And when you say tarkib, it is also joining two words, but in an altogether different manner. So what does that mean? The text, or rather the slide in terms of the explanatory notes, it reads, joining in a manner that the individual meanings are maintained. That is what we refer to as, ta'lif. So when you look now at what we have here, Usul al-Fiqh, Imam al-Haramain refers to that as ta'lif. What does it mean? It means that you're joining two words together, the one being usul and the other one being fiqh. You mean joining them together in what manner? In a manner that the individual meanings of both the word usul and the word fiqh is maintained, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. On the other hand, when you look at tarkib, tarkib is also when you join two words together, but in a way that the individual meanings are sacrificed. And this is what we refer to in English, or some refer to it as blending. So examples of that in the Arabic language would be a word like Hadramaut. We're not going to refer to it as a ta'lif. We're going to be referring to it as a tarkib. Why? Because we are joining two words together, but we are blending them in a manner that the individual meanings get sacrificed for another meaning. So Hadramaut would be Hadara and Maut. It would be two words, but we blend them together and now it refers to a city in Yemen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So that was just a little bit more about the wording which Imam al-Haramain uses, and that is ذَلِكَ مُؤَلَّفٌ. This word is made up of. And also it gives us an idea in terms of the richness of the Arabic language. But let's not get caught up in that. The important part is that Imam al-Haramain is looking at the construct. What construct is that? Usul al-Fiqh. There are two words. And the first word being usul. What does the word usul mean? Firstly, the word usul is a plural. And it is the plural of the word asl. It is the plural of the word asl. And the word asl is defined in many ways. The first way given by Ibn al-Firkah, one of the commentators of Imam al-Haramain's Al-Waraqat, he says that فَالْأَصْلُ مَا بُنِيَ عَلَيْهِ غَيْرُهُ. Let's visit the slide in this particular regard. What does it say? فَالْأَصْلُ مَا بُنِيَ عَلَيْهِ غَيْرُهُ. Asl is that upon which something is built, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So very simply, this is a very simple breakdown of the word asl. So asl is the singular form of the word usul. Asl is the singular form of the word usul. Asl is the singular form of the word usul. We're talking about usul al-fiqh. What does asl mean? Asl ma bunya alay ghayruhu. That upon which something is built. So now our scholars say that, look, this is the closest, in other words, the more correct definition of the word asl. Why do they say that? They say that because tangible examples support this particular definition. So if you have a house, and you're looking to the foundation of the house, what is the foundation? Foundation is that upon which the house is built, that upon which the walls are built. What do we refer to that foundation to as? We refer to that as asl. And what is the definition of an asl? Ma bunya alay ghayruhu, that upon which something else is built. So just if we think ahead now and you think about usul al-fiqh, so what would it be? Usul al-fiqh is that science upon which fiqh is built, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Another example would be the example that of a tree. When we look at the roots of the tree comes from the roots. In other words, the tree is built upon the roots. Those roots are referred to in the Arabic language as asl. So we find that this particular definition of asl, ma bunya alayhi ghayruhu, that upon which something else is built, it is quite apt, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And then again, once again, we find that there are certain other definitions. We have already established that the best definition is the definition which we gave a moment ago. However, looking at the other definitions, al-ashya'u tu'rafu bi'adadiha, things are known by its opposites. Here, they may not be opposites, but they are alternate definitions, and they also assist us in understanding this particular phenomenon a bit better, though we're not going to appropriate them as our ideal and our prime definitions, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Let's read through them very quickly. So the first one says aslu shay ma minhu shay. Now here we have to be a bit particular in terms of the way we're going to translate this particular Arabic phrase. So the asl of something is that which a thing is from. So aslu shay, certain scholars say, is ma minhu shay, that from which a thing is from. Now this definition is not the best definition, since 1 is from 10, but we do not refer to 10 as the asl of 1. In the same way, what do we find? We find that a part actually comes from the whole, but we don't refer to the whole as the asl of the part, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Another definition also, and that would be the second one in terms of the slide, says al-aslu huwa al-muhtaj ilay, that which is required. If you require it, then you refer to that required thing as asl. Again, this doesn't work. For example, we find that there's a father, by way of example, and in order for the father to be referred to as a father, he needs to have a son. If he doesn't have a son, then he cannot be referred to as a father. But then we don't refer to the son as the asl of the father. And then too, what can happen is you can flip it around. In order for the son to be a son, he must also have a father. Then what you're going to have at one time is one entity at one and the same time is going to be referred to as the asl and is going to be referred to as the far. And for two mutually exclusive phenomenon to exist at one time, that is what we refer to as impossible, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So now look, we're trying to keep things as simple as we possibly can, and it is a simple science really. If I'm able to understand it, then a fortiori to a greater degree, you are also able to understand it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So just to recap now, what have we done so far? We basically said that Usul al-Fiqh is a construct. It is made up of two words. Point number one. Point number two is that the word Usul is a plural of the word Asl. The word Usul is a plural of the word Asl. Asl has a number of meanings. We're going to go with the first one. And what is that? Ma bunya alayhi ghayru, that upon which something else is based. And it's very clear to link that to what we are going to be speaking about, because it's Usul al-Fiqh. In other words, fiqh is based upon this particular science, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Now, since we were looking at the concept of Asl, we want to know Usul al-Fiqh. The scholars, what they do really is they have a sort of a tangent discussion, a digression discussion. Since they were looking at the concept of Asl is juxtaposed to the concept of Fara. So if Asl is ma bunya alayhi ghayru, that upon which something else is built, then Far would be that which is built upon something else. So the tree example, if you look at the tree example, the root is the Asl. Why is it called the Asl? Because the tree is built upon it. Then the tree, that which is built upon something else, that is referred to as the Far, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Here there are one or two very important considerations, and I've basically written this down due to the importance of this particular phenomenon. I don't want to crowd the slides too much, but this phenomenon is very important. Just think about this whole idea of Usul al-Fiqh, the basis of fiqh. So in other words, fiqh is actually a far'. Fiqh is built upon something else. What is it built upon? It is built upon a very strong foundation. What is a strong foundation? The strong foundation is referred to as Islamic legal theory. And the point that I really wish to make in this particular slide would be that for us to get an appreciation of Usul al-Fiqh in tandem with fiqh. In other words, fiqh in light of its usul. If we are going to differ in terms of usul, we're going to differ in terms of Islamic legal theory principles, then by extension we are going to differ in terms of the rulings. And this is important for each and every one of us to appreciate. So allow me to read through this particular slide which drives home this particular point, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So what we have come to identify this here is actually a direct translation from Ibn Firkah's work. He says basically what we have come to identify as the madhab or a madhab is really the far of the science. In other words, it is that which is built upon usul, dubbed usul al-fiqh. So what is a madhab? A madhab really is that when you establish an Islamic legal theory, you create a foundation. Whatever you build on that foundation, that we refer to as a madhab. So let's think about a single story and a double story. If you lay a foundation that is good enough for a single story, then your building is going to be a single story. If we lay a different foundation and then your building is going to be a single story, it can also be a double story. So when the foundation differs and then the building is going to differ, this should ideally lead us to appreciate fiqh better and also usul fiqh at the same time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The fact above is particularly relevant for persons seeking to dispense of madhahib. To explain, the sources of Islamic law are 4 in total: an exact text from the Quran and Sunnah, the consensus of the scholars, number 2, number 3, precedent in terms of qiyas, and number 4, the transmission of a madhab. Number 4, the transmission of a madhab is defined as a specific manner of extrapolating law. As most of our texts in terms of Quran and Sunnah are probable, the bulk of Sharia is based on number 4. Since scholars differ in terms of the principles they employ to understand the Quran and Sunnah, it naturally gives rise to different views, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Thus, Islamic legal theory gives rise to madhahib. Barakallahu fikum. The next issue we're going to look at, we're going to put now usul behind us. We've looked at the term asl and we've looked at usul and all of the discussions around there. We're now going to go to the second word in this particular construct, and that word is al-fiqh. I'm sure by now you'd be very familiar with the term fiqh. What does fiqh mean? There is a literal meaning to the word fiqh, and literally the word fiqh means al-fahm, that is to understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word in this particular manner in terms of Quran. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? قالوا يا شعيب ما نفقه كثيرا مما تقول. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about the people of Shu'aib, they said to him, "Ma nafqahu," we do not understand much of what you say. So the word nafqahu, faqiha, yafqahu is used there to denote understanding. And this is the linguistic, the lexical meaning of the word fiqh. It basically means to understand. So usul al-fiqh, the basis of understanding. The word fiqh, however, here is not used in its literal lexical sense. The word fiqh is used in its istilahi. It is used in its technical sense. So technically, what does fiqh refer to? Our scholars say that fiqh refers to ma'rifatul ahkam al-shar'iyyah allati tariquha al-ijtihad. Fiqh is knowledge. Fiqh is the knowledge of the revelatory rulings established by ijtihad. So that might sound like a mouthful, so I want to give you a more informal type of definition, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or rather translation. Well, fiqh, what is fiqh? Literally it means to understand, but technically, when you say I'm going to a fiqh class, what are you going to learn there? Ma'rifatul ahkam, it is knowledge, al-ahkam, of the rulings. Which rulings? Ash-shar'iyyah, the shar'i rulings. Now this construct put together, al-ahkam ash-shar'iyyah, we've translated it as revelatory laws. Allati tariq wal-ijtihad, established by ijtihad. Now, what is ijtihad? What is ijtihad? Our scholars say, استفراغ الفقيه الوسعة ليحصل له ظن بحكم شرعي. What does it mean? When a faqih expands all his efforts to acquire probable knowledge regarding a revelatory law. So that's very simple and very straightforward. Usul al-fiqh, the basis of fiqh. What is fiqh? Literally to understand. And usul al-fiqh, what is fiqh technically speaking? It is knowledge of those laws which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. Now there are one of two ways of gaining knowledge of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of them are necessary knowledge, that you gain them in a categorical sense. Other knowledge, you have to apply your thought and you have to apply your mind in order to ascertain what the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Those laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have to apply thought and you have to apply mind in order to know exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you in that particular regard, those particular laws are referred to as fiqh. So when we talk about usul al-fiqh, we're saying, what is the basis for that? What is the basis in order to extrapolate that law which requires the application of thought and mental activity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Before we go on, it is important for us to get a very good idea and understanding of what the word fiqh means technically. So we looked at the definition. That definition has a number of clauses. We're going to look to those clauses now. What are they? The definition reads ma'rifatul ahkam. The word ma'rifah is mentioned. We translated the word ma'rifah as knowledge. Al-ahkam, we looked at the word ahkam, we said that were rules. Al-shar'iyyah, shar'iyyah means revelatory rules. Now, what is meant thereby? Established by ijtihad. So we find that there are 4 clauses to the definition. Each clause seeks to include something into the definition, and at the same time also it seeks to exclude something from the definition. So let's look at the first clause, and these clauses are all very interesting. So yes, we are gaining an understanding of fiqh, but it's important for us to understand what fiqh is. This is not a fiqh lesson, but this is usul fiqh, the basis of fiqh. But what is fiqh first? It's important for us to understand that. We've given a definition. Now we're going to look at the clauses of the definition. We're going to look at as to what is meant by the clauses. By virtue of these clauses, what are included and what are excluded. So number 1, the author says, Imam al-Haramain says, I'm not too sure now if Imam al-Haramain actually gives this definition. Yes, he gives the definition. This is his definition, it is his words. He says, ma'rifah. What does the word ma'rifah mean? So here we have an interesting discussion. Ma'rifatul ahkam, we translated as knowledge of revelatory laws. For a moment, I just want you to forget the translation. I want you to understand the meaning of the word ma'rifah. What is the word ma'rifah? So when you say ma'rifatul ahkam, I have knowledge of the ahkam. What do you actually mean when you employ the term ma'rifah in terms of Arabic? So the first thing is that ma'rifah is synonymous to ilm. Ilm is clearly distinguished from doubt and shak in Arabic and dhan, probability, since ilm is resolute and certain. So now we have a good idea in terms of what ma'rifah is. So ma'rifah in that particular, so fiqh could now mean ma'rifatul ahkam, when you have certainty of the revelatory laws. that creates a bit of an issue. And not that you and I have an issue with it. This particular issue was raised very early on by one of the scholars known as Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqillani. So what did he do? He objected to the usage of the word ma'rifah in the definition. His argument reads as follows. So what does he say? He says, when you look at fiqh, which is knowledge of the revelatory laws, what do we find? The most that an original thinker can muster as regards rules that are established by ijtihad is probability. So when a faqih, when he looks, he wants to establish a given ruling. He wants to establish a given ruling. Let's look at the ruling. The ruling would be whether a rice is considered a usurious item or not. He wants to ascertain the ruling in that particular regard. So what does he do? He applies himself to the text. He comes to the conclusion that, look, since wheat is usurious, then rice should also be usurious because they share in an illah, they share in an underlying reasoning. So he joins them two together. But this knowledge which he gains therefrom, is it certain knowledge? Can he say with certainty, 100% certainty, that rice has with certainty the same ruling that wheat has? No, he can't do that. The most he can come to after applying himself is to say that in all probability, 99.9%, in all probability, the ruling of rice is the same as the ruling that of wheat. So if the application of himself leads to probable knowledge, how can we then define fiqh as certainty as regards to the knowledge of revelatory laws? So this is the objection which has been raised, and it is very simply answered. The objection raised above is answered by stating that the pathways leading to revelatory rulings are known with certainty, and the pathways are basically the narration and what we refer to as qiyas. What is meant here? This is one of the answers that is given. I think a more simpler answer would be, wallahu alam, that we understand that what is meant by ma'rifah is dhan. We simply understand that when we say that knowledge of the revelatory laws, we don't mean certain knowledge. We basically mean probable knowledge. That is the one way of looking at it. Why then did they use the word ma'rifah? Because the word ma'rifah, it doesn't refer to the individual laws, like the example of rice that I gave a moment ago. It doesn't refer to that, but rather it refers to the means that the jurist employs in order to reach that ruling. What did he do here in this particular regard? He used an analogy. Now, an analogy, we know with certainty that an analogy creates law. It is a valid means of extrapolating law, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So those are the angles that we look at. I think that is fairly clear, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We go on to the second clause. So we said ma'rifah. What is fiqh? Fiqh is knowledge, and we know that knowledge now refers to probable knowledge and not certain knowledge. So fiqh is knowledge of what? The second clause reads al-ahkam, knowledge of al-ahkam. So the word ahkam is the plural of the word hukam. Now, hukam in this context is defined as the address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to the action of the morally responsible. So again, the word hukam in this particular context of usul fiqh, what does the word hukam refer to? It is knowledge of the hukam. What does hukam mean? Hukam means the address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to our actions. So when would you be called a faqih? So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, aqimus salah, establish the prayer. Okay, this wouldn't be the best example, as we will see in a moment bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let me think of another example. Allah says وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ, that those who have been divorced, they should remain in a waiting period for 3 qur. What is a qur? A qur would be either a tuhur according to the Shafi school of thought, or it would be a hayd according to the Hanafi school of thought. So this particular verse in the Holy Quran, what is it? It is an address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to our actions. What action are we talking about? The lady in a waiting period. So when a person has knowledge of the address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to our actions. What are we going to say about him? Ma'rifatul ahkam. He has knowledge of ahkam, and ahkam is the address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to our actions, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The next issue is also like a very interesting issue, and again these our scholars explain in order for us to gain a good understanding and a good grasp of these concepts. You'd notice that ma'rifatul ahkam, and my focus being on the word al-ahkam, it has an alif lam at the beginning. Now we know in the Arabic language that alif lam has a number of meanings. The one meaning would be for istighraq. In other words, ma'rifatul ahkam now means in order for you to refer to somebody as a faqih, he has to know al-ahkam. If the al is for istighraq, it basically translates as knowledge of all the revelatory laws. And there's nobody that knows all of the revelatory laws. So in other words, you will not have a faqih. You will not have a faqih. So therefore, it is absurd for us to adopt that particular meaning of the alif lam. It can't be. Ma'rifatul ahkam. A faqih is only a faqih when he knows all of the revelatory laws. So that's not a faqih. Otherwise, we will not have on the face of the earth any faqih. Imam Malik was an example in that particular regard. For so many questions, he would say, La adri, I don't know. So we say he's not a faqih. Why? Because a faqih means ma'rifatul ahkam, knowledge of all the laws. No. That cannot be. So because it leads to this absurdity, we have to go back to the drawing board and we have to look once again at the word al-ahkam. The next option would be to say that let's give it its default meaning. And the default meaning would be that it's for jins. Now, any given person, like the example I gave earlier on, you know the verse and you know that particular ruling in relation to that particular action. You only know that one. So then if ma'rifatul ahkam, if that alif lam they refer to, you know, if you know one of the genre of this entire genus, and then you'd be considered a faqih, it would mean that a person simply needs to go to a class, learn one mas'ala, and because he knows that one mas'ala, we now refer to him as a faqih. That is equally absurd, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So now I'm going to go to the text to look at the most satisfactory answer which was given in this particular regard, and I've explained the first paragraph, the second paragraph, I'm now on the third one. What does it read as? It says, the most satisfactory answer is that knowledge of al-ahkam refers to the capacity. Here I'm translating the word quwwah, an ability, malaka, the capacity and ability to apply thought. الملكة والقوة في النظر الأحكام, in order to apply thought to rulings when they occur, not for the rulings always to be top of mind. I'm going to read that again because it's very important. The most satisfactory answer, in other words, when we say ma'rifatul ahkam, a faqih is someone who has knowledge of the rulings. What does it mean? It basically means that he has knowledge of al-ahkam. In other words, he has the capacity and ability to apply thought to any given situation when they occur. So when he has this ability, we refer to him as a faqih, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. This for me is a very important understanding of Usul al-Fiqh, or fiqh for that matter, because we're not considering ourselves as fuqaha, but what does it do? It brings fiqh well within our grasp, and it gives us opportunity at least to aspire to becoming budding fuqaha or expert fuqaha, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. To end of that particular point, which I think is very important, some scholars do say ma'rifatul ahkam is actually a bit of a problem. So what they reinterpreted as, and this is also a very acceptable explanation, they say ma'rifatul ahkam, what actually they mean is ma'rifatu jullul ahkam, that a faqih is somebody who knows the bulk of revelatory laws. He doesn't know everything. So like Imam Malik at times is going to say, I don't know. But by and large, if you were to ask him of a given question, he will be able to answer that particular question, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So we've now looked at a number of causes, ma'rifatul ahkam, two clauses actually, and now we're going to look at the third one. What does the third one read as? Ma'rifatul ahkam al-shar'iyyah, knowledge of the revelatory laws, al-shar'iyyah. So you get different types of ahkam, you get different types of rulings. You get revelatory laws. Excuse me. You get revelatory laws, that's the one that you get. And then also you get like logical laws. For example, a part is smaller than a whole, and a whole is bigger than a part. That is based on your intellect. two mutually exclusive phenomena cannot exist externally at the same time. For example, I cannot be conducting the lesson and not conducting the lesson at one at the same time. It's either the one or it is the one or the other, but two cannot occur at one at the same time. So those are laws, but those are laws which we draw from our intellect, not that we draw from revelation. So when we're talking about fiqh, a faqih, he is one that knows the revelatory laws, even if it be, let's say hypothetically speaking, that he is ignorant of certain logical laws, like a whole is bigger than a part. So despite the fact that he is ignorant as regards to that, but because he's knowledgeable of the revelatory laws, is going to be referred to as a faqih. So the term shar'iyyah seeks to exclude laws which are established by way of the intellect, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The fourth clause that we're going to be looking at is the clause that reads, what is the fourth clause? The fourth clause is معرفة الأحكام الشرعية التي طريق الاجتهاد, which we come to know by way of ijtihad. Now, it's very simple to understand this particular phenomenon. Do you know the address of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that relates to the 5 daily prayers? Yes, there's a command wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that you need to pray 5 times a day. How did we get to that? We didn't have to apply ourselves. A scholar, a lay person, any person who considers himself as a believer would be familiar with that particular ruling. So that is not calling fiqh. You can't say, I know that zakah is wajib, and you go running around in the road and say, yeah, I'm a faqih. No, a faqih is a person who has knowledge of the revelatory laws, those laws that you only gain knowledge of after applying yourself, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So let's look through clause number 4, established by ijtihad. These revelatory rulings are either established by way of ijtihad or categorically. Examples of the latter case, in other words, that which is established categorically, are the 5 daily prayers, zina is impermissible, hajj is compulsory for the person that can do so. But so when we're talking about knowledge of the rulings, so knowledge of the rulings mentioned above is not referred to as fiqh. In other words, the fact that the 5 daily prayers are wajib, or the fact that zina is haram, or the fact that hajj is compulsory upon a person that is able to do so. A person who has that knowledge is not called a faqih. This type of knowledge is not referred to as fiqh. For this reason, the clause established by ijtihad has been included. A faqih is thus knowledgeable regarding issues requiring thought application and ijtihad. Once he applies his thought, he applies his mind, or he has to apply his mind in order to determine a particular ruling, then that particular person is called a faqih. So what have we done in today's class? Alhamdulillah, we've looked at the term Usul al-Fiqh. It is a construct. We've broken it down to usul, and we looked at fiqh. Then we looked at the literal meaning of the word fiqh, and then we looked at the technical meaning of the word fiqh. So what do we come down to now? Imam al-Haramain is telling us that these are a few pages. It deals with Islamic legal theory. In other words, it deals with usul fiqh. What is usul fiqh? It is a construct made up of 2 words, usul and fiqh. And in this lesson, we have broken that down. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu fikum jami'an. Till we meet in our next lesson, may Allah bless you, may Allah protect you. Do remember us in your pious supplications. بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.